Thanks very much, Carl, and I do appreciate you accommodating my being able to be here. I first met Floribert Chebeya in 1992 when he received the Reebok Human Rights Award. The award was initiated in 1988, and for 20 years the awards were presented to young people, 30 years old and younger, activists. I was privileged to serve as an advisor for each of those 20 years from my perch with Human Rights First. Each year we picked extraordinary young people to receive the award, but the class of 1992 was really special. In addition to Floribert, we selected a dynamic human rights advocate from Northern Ireland named Martin O'Brien, who went on really to be the leader of the human rights movement there, an embattled activist from East Timor named Fernando de Araujo, and a passionate women's rights advocate from the US named Stacey Cabot. I remember so well being at the ceremony in Boston when they received the awards. The four of them, each in their own way, embodied a personal courage and commitment. And I think we were all struck by the fact that at a very tender age, these four people were already making an extraordinary difference. But none was in a more precarious position than Floribert. I remember talking to him there in Boston about the voice of the voiceless and his stories about the political violence in the Congo, then called Zaire. The stories were shocking and overwhelming. It's easy in a place like the DRC to lose hope, to adopt a sense of despair, and to keep one's head down and to try to survive. But that was not Floribert's way. He was someone who saw injustice and he worked to challenge it. He saw human suffering and he had a special human compassion and empathy to comfort its victims. He saw wrongdoing and was there every day for more than 2 decades, letting the world know that these violations were occurring and challenging those who were responsible. Floribert was a kind and a gentle man, but also someone with steely determination which so often characterizes human rights defenders in tough places. One could easily be fooled by his somewhat frail appearance into assuming that he wasn't strong or tough. Nothing could have been further from the truth. He was a force of nature and a dedicated, principled advocate for human rights and the rule of law. He built Voice of the Voiceless into a major human rights organization in the DRC. Through his organization, he and his colleagues engaged in public education, training, and sustained public advocacy, both on individual cases and broader issues. Every year, Voice of the Voiceless would literally issue dozens of press statements, reports, and other materials documenting violations of human rights. These materials were a cornerstone, the factual predicate for effective advocacy. But he did more than that. Floribert became a leader of the human rights movement throughout the DRC. His passion and his commitment provided encouragement to many others, dozens of others, maybe hundreds of others who were entering the human rights field. He inspired them with his speeches, but he also helped to educate them, train them in the nuts and bolts of human rights fact-finding and advocacy. He organized conferences, workshops, training sessions that enabled people to come together and plot strategies collectively. His wisdom and his judgment helped a very vulnerable human rights movement in the DRC make the kind of difficult decisions and judgments that come with the territory. As a leader, Floribert Chebeya spoke truth to power, and in the end, he paid the ultimate price for his courageous activism. The environment in which he worked was extraordinarily difficult. We just released in March our latest human rights report of the State Department covering 2009. The report concludes, in all areas of the country, the DRC government's human rights record remained poor. Security forces continued to act with impunity throughout the year, committing many abuses, including lawful killings, disappearances, torture, and rape. With respect to the government's attitude towards human rights defenders, we concluded, security forces continued to harass, beat, intimidate and arbitrarily arrest and detain local human rights advocates and NGO workers. Government intimidation of domestic human rights defenders worsened. Repeating those words again next year is not enough. All of us, in government and outside, must do what we can to ensure that those responsible for Floribert's death be investigated, prosecuted, and brought to justice. The U.S. government has joined many others, including UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, in urging that the government of DRC institute an independent, robust, and credible investigation into Floribert's death. We've offered to assist this investigation in whatever ways we can. To date, the government of the DRC has not taken up on this offer. Whatever investigative efforts the government does undertake need to be open and transparent. Sadly, Floribert's death was not the first attack on human rights defenders in the DRC, so it's especially critical now that the government pursue this investigation expeditiously, openly, and to the full extent of the law to break the cycle of impunity. Today, we remember the remarkable life of Floribert Chebeya. Let us remember him as a kind and decent man whose generosity of spirit allowed him to give so much of himself to help so many in need. We've lost a good friend. We will miss him greatly. Thank you.